Okay.
Hey everybody, it's good to be with you. This is the first time we've ever done this, but I want to introduce you to my good friend, Dr. Denise Frazier-Vasilakis. I'm Chad Yeager. It's good to be with you today. This is the first of what we hope is maybe a weekly resource for the next little while to give you some tools to make your way through an unprecedented time in human history. My first question to you, Denise, is have you ever seen a global situation quite like this?
Never. Even 9/11 was a little different. This is very, very different and frightening.
Yeah. So I want you to hear, if you're watching this, that it's okay that you're a little bit alarmed, and that if you don't know what's happening or what's going to become of the future, you're not the only one. There's a pastor and a therapist who are online feeling the same thing. But what we hope to do is give you some resources and tools today. So I have a notepad with me right now, and I'm going to ask Denise some questions, and that's going to allow us to learn a bunch about what we can do. And the conversation we're going to have today hopefully is encouraging you, and maybe you want to share it with somebody in your life who's also a little bit anxious.
Right.
So I want to call this, Denise, that preparing people for the roller coaster of a crisis.
Yeah.
When you go to the amusement park, you see the roller coaster, you can anticipate what it's going to do. It's going to go through spins and loops and a couple dark tunnels, big climbs, huge falls. And that makes it a little bit more tolerable when we're on it. There's a bunch of people who right now feel like they're in the middle of a roller coaster. What would you say to them?
First, normalize it, because you're absolutely right. When we know what's coming, our brain can function differently. When we don't know what's coming, our brain gets pretty panicky. And then we get, our heart rate goes up, we get really anxious, and we kind of get frozen. And we make decisions often out of fear. So what we want to do is kind of go back to the basics, just go back to just how am I feeling? Am I taking care of myself health-wise? Am I resting? Am I sleeping? Am I eating well? We just start with the basics.
I love that. And I know I'm not the only one who's hearing this, who's been frozen at some point in the last week. The media coverage comes in, or we hear this update, and it feels like we have to dive deep into this endless sea of information. And we emerge from it not really that much better, but even more anxious.
Exactly right. Yeah, our brain gets even more worked up. Instead of maybe what we need to do is kind of go back to those basics and start with what we can do.
Yeah, we do that in the conversations I've had with families when their loved one is in a critical situation in a hospital or maybe at the end of life. We'll do the same thing. We'll talk about eating and sleeping and getting outside the hospital for a short walk. Just those little breaks can bring us back to the feeling of humanity. Yeah,
so, that's exactly right, and calms it down.
Yeah. One question I think you'd be an expert on, Denise, is the experience of a crisis. So you've dealt with people in personal tragedy, victims of horrendous neglect or abuse, loss. Every crisis is different, but there's some things that are always the same. What is pretty consistent no matter what the crisis is?
I think that one of the main things is wanting our families to be safe. I work primarily with women, and they're worried about their children. They want their children to be safe. They want their families to be safe. And I think in this crisis, we want our families to be safe and our children to be safe and our partners to be safe. And we don't know how to make sure that that is exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, man, that's spot on. So what do you do when you're really concerned about the safety of people you love and yet you can't control or predict the future?
You start with taking care of yourself, because it's kind of like on an airplane. The adults have to have the oxygen on first before they help somebody else. And so, and it helps to kind of limit how much time you spend listening, frankly, to the news, because every time you hear that, you don't know how that roller coaster is going to go up or down. And it just keeps overstimulating the brain, and then it causes that panic into the body.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we're
good place to start.
We're 8 days into this crisis, and I know what I felt is that every day it seems like it's getting worse. And there's
Mhm.
very few
Right.
moments of good news, and we're starting to crave any sort of positivity we can find. And said to a
Right.
coworker, it feels like we're just swimming upstream. The very next day, there's a new restriction or a new loss, and it's probably going to
Right.
get worse before it's going to get better. How does that roller coaster mentality help us, knowing that there are going to be down moments, there are going to be up moments, prepare us for a longer, almost perseverance through it? If you know what I'm saying?
Hmm. That's a good question. Wait, you're gonna have to say that question to me again. Say it again.
So knowing that life is up and life is down, and there's going to be these experiences, how does that help
Exactly.
us
Ah,
prepare for the unknown in a way of like anticipating that there's going to be down moments?
yeah. It's good to remember how many ups and downs that we've had in our life. I'll be a little prejudiced. I think sometimes that's good to have the grandparents in your life
Mm,
because they've lived through a lot and they can tell their families how it works, through wars and depressions. And the main thing is for us to keep focusing on what can we do?
mm,
What do we have control over? We have control over making a great pot of soup and having a family dinner.
yeah,
So we do that
yeah,
without
yeah,
letting all the news take everything away, you know?
yeah. I
And I
know.
think you and
Oh, go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. No, you go.
Well, Denise and I are still new at this. So it's going to take a couple moments to get it right. Um,
Yeah.
I know what you said. Focusing on what you can do is so important. I was
Mhm.
pretty overstimulated yesterday and reached out to my
Mm,
wife in the middle of the day. And I was going to come home from work, and I said, "Hey, when I get home tonight, let's do a no news evening."
mm,
I just needed to turn down the
brilliant.
noise, and we have like a daily practice where we
Mhm.
pretty much check in on the news. And instead, we had a
Yeah.
good family meal. We played Uno as
Yeah.
a family. We put
Perfect.
the kids to bed, and then she and I grabbed books and sat on the couch and talked to each other.
Wow.
And but it took an intentional choice to kind of limit the noise.
Yeah.
What can
Yeah.
we control? And now I'm able to re-engage, and I find my work is
Mhm.
better today. My conversations are better. My
Mhm.
interactions with my children are better.
Right.
I think that's just when you said that, I thought, oh, that's what we're trying. That's what I'm doing and thinking.
It's perfect because otherwise we lose the day
Yeah,
and we've lost that moment, which really, you know, I don't know if I can say this or not, but I could walk when we're finished out my front door and get hit by a bus. So it's not just the virus.
yeah,
We live in a very dangerous world and we need to take the moment. It
yeah,
sounds pretty cliche, but it's true. And you
man.
did it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think what you said there is what so many of us are feeling. Like we've lost a day, we've lost a week,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
we've been frozen in our anxiety. And so it's a reminder,
Hmm.
hey,
Hmm.
we can pull back, we can take control, even if it's a
Hmm.
little piece of our life. We can see it
Right.
roller coaster. It's going to be a little while. There's going to be good and bad.
Hmm.
We can find our way through it.
Right. Right. That's exactly right. And I think, obviously prayer helps a great deal. And it's us practicing turning it over, turning it over,
Yeah,
turning it over.
yeah,
Because I like to think I can run everything, but I can't.
yeah. It is. It's an underutilized resource, whether you're a person of faith or not. The ability of surrendering what you can't control.
Yeah.
With Christian
Yeah.
faith, we are more maybe skilled at giving that away, but we forget that moments like this too. That
Mm-hmm.
in prayer
Mm-hmm.
we surrender and trust in God's goodness. It's funny you talked
Right.
about people who are a little bit older, have a little bit more life experience.
Yeah.
The last 10 days or so, I've been calling some of our seniors to check in on them. And what's
Mm-hmm.
remarkable is they're always the ones who are calming me down, saying, this too
Mm-hmm.
will pass
Yeah.
day by day.
Yeah.
God is in control. Those kind of reminders that I
Right.
forget about when I get anxious.
Right. Because we all like to think we're in control of everything, and we're not really.
Yeah.
But there are some things we do have control. You had control over coming in the house, making a decision, we're shutting off the news. And, that worked perfectly.
Yeah.
And nothing changed in that hour
Yeah.
or 2 hours or however long it take you to win the Uno game.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
My wife
yeah.
won, just in case anybody's keeping track.
Oh yeah, well, good for her. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Denise, this has been great. We could talk for a couple hours, but instead we're going to try to break this into 10-minute segments. We'll talk again next week. The next week's
Okay.
conversations is going to be about powerlessness and the overstimulation of the brain and how we can
Okay.
actually work our way through that. So look forward to welcoming you back. Thanks so much to Dr. Denise Frazier of
Thank you.
Practice. She's awesome, and we hope this is encouraging you. If it is, please share it with somebody you love. Thanks.